There's a place that exists in every city, every neighborhood, every community around the world. It's not hidden behind government walls or protected by armed guards. You don't need special clearance to enter, and there are no age restrictions. In fact, most people visit this place regularly without giving it a second thought. Yet for over 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide, this place represents the ultimate forbidden territory, more dangerous to them than any war zone or restricted government facility. What is this mysterious location that strikes fear into the hearts of an entire religious community? It's surprisingly simple, yet devastatingly complex. The one place where Jehovah's Witnesses cannot go is into their own past. More specifically, they cannot go into the space of questioning, doubting, or critically examining their own beliefs and the organization that governs their lives. This invisible barrier is more impenetrable than any physical wall. While governments in 41 countries have banned Jehovah's Witnesses from practicing their religion, creating literal places they cannot go, the organization itself has created something far more restrictive, a mental and emotional space that members cannot enter without risking everything they hold dear. Understanding why this psychological territory is so forbidden requires examining the intricate system of control that governs every aspect of a Jehovah's Witness's life. From the moment they wake up until they go to sleep, their thoughts, associations, and activities are carefully regulated through a complex web of rules, expectations, and social pressures. Consider what happens when a Jehovah's Witness begins to question. Perhaps they wonder why their organization predicted the end of the world in 1914, 1925, 1975, and other dates that came and went without incident. Maybe they question why they cannot celebrate their child's birthday or attend a friend's wedding in another church. They might wonder why former members, including their own family members, must be completely shunned and treated as if they're dead. The moment these questions arise, they've entered forbidden territory. The organization has trained them from childhood to recognize such thoughts as dangerous, apostate thinking, planted by Satan himself. They're taught that questioning the organization is equivalent to questioning God, and that doubt is a spiritual weakness that must be immediately suppressed. This conditioning begins early and runs deep. Children are taught that their salvation depends entirely on obedience to the organization's rules and teachings. They learn that independent thinking is dangerous, that higher education is spiritually hazardous, and that anyone who leaves the organization has been deceived by Satan and become an enemy of God. By adulthood, the mental barriers against questioning have become nearly insurmountable. The consequences of entering this forbidden space of doubt are severe and immediate. Unlike government persecution, which might result in imprisonment or fines, the organizational punishment is often worse: complete social death. Family members are required to shun those who question too openly, friends disappear overnight, and entire support systems evaporate. For many witnesses, losing their family and community is a fate worse than death itself. This explains why even when presented with overwhelming evidence of organizational failures, false predictions, or logical inconsistencies, many witnesses cannot allow themselves to truly examine these issues. The psychological cost is simply too high. They've been conditioned to fear the very mental processes that might lead them to uncomfortable truths about their beliefs. The organization reinforces this psychological imprisonment through constant information control. Witnesses are strongly discouraged from reading literature critical of their beliefs, visiting certain websites, or engaging with former members who might share their experiences. This creates an intellectual echo chamber where questioning voices are systematically silenced and conformity is constantly reinforced. Regular meetings, conventions, and study sessions hammer home the message that the organization is God's only true representative on earth, that salvation is impossible outside its structure, and that questioning its authority is tantamount to rebelling against God himself. This creates a closed system where doubt cannot survive, because it's immediately identified as spiritual danger and suppressed before it can fully develop. The irony is striking. While Jehovah's Witnesses face government persecution in dozens of countries for their beliefs, they simultaneously maintain an internal system that forbids the very intellectual freedom that many of their persecutors claim to be protecting. They fight for the right to practice their religion while systematically denying their own members the right to question that practice. This psychological imprisonment affects not just active members, but also those who have already left. Many former witnesses describe years or decades of recovery from what they call cult indoctrination. The fear of thinking critically about their former beliefs can persist long after they've physically left the organization. They describe having to learn basic critical thinking skills that were systematically suppressed during their time as witnesses. The process of entering the forbidden territory of doubt is often traumatic and chaotic. Those who begin questioning describe it like awakening from a dream or removing colored glasses they didn't know they were wearing. Suddenly, behavior that seemed normal and justified appears controlling and manipulative. Teachings that seemed reasonable reveal logical inconsistencies and contradictions. This awakening rarely happens all at once. More often, it's a gradual process that can take months or years. A member might begin by questioning small policies or procedures, gradually working up to more fundamental doubts about the organization's authority and teachings. Each step deeper into this forbidden territory requires enormous courage, because the potential consequences become more severe. Some enter this space accidentally. They might encounter information online that contradicts what they've been taught, or witness behavior by organization leaders that conflicts with stated principles. Others are pushed into it by personal crises that the organization's promises fail to address, such as struggling with depression despite following all the rules perfectly, or watching a loved one die after refusing a blood transfusion. The organization works hard to prevent these accidental encounters with doubt by controlling information flow and social associations. Witnesses are taught to immediately reject any information that contradicts official teachings, regardless of its source or evidence. They're trained to view such information as spiritual poison that could contaminate their faith if they allow themselves to consider it seriously. This creates a bizarre situation where intelligent, educated adults systematically avoid learning about their own religion from any source other than their organization's publications. Many witnesses know virtually nothing about their organization's history, the backgrounds of its leaders, or the development of its doctrines. They've been taught that such information is unnecessary at best and dangerous at worst. The psychological manipulation extends to language itself. The organization has developed its own vocabulary that shapes how members think about questioning and doubt. Terms like apostate, worldly, and spiritually weak carry powerful emotional charges that shut down rational discussion before it can begin. Questions are reframed as murmuring or complaining, and doubt is portrayed as evidence of insufficient faith or study. This linguistic control makes it extremely difficult for witnesses to articulate their doubts even to themselves. They lack the vocabulary to express concerns without simultaneously condemning themselves as spiritually deficient. This internal censorship is perhaps the most effective tool in keeping them out of the forbidden territory of critical thinking. The organization also uses social pressure to maintain psychological control. Witnesses are encouraged to report on each other's behavior and attitudes, creating a surveillance system where expressing doubt to the wrong person can have serious consequences. This environment of mutual monitoring makes it dangerous to share questions or concerns with anyone, further isolating those who begin to doubt. Regular confession sessions with organization elders serve as additional checkpoints where members' thoughts and attitudes are examined for signs of dangerous independence. Elders are trained to identify and address wrong thinking before it develops into open questioning. These sessions, called shepherding calls, ostensibly exist to provide spiritual help but often function as ideological enforcement mechanisms. The most insidious aspect of this psychological prison is that it's presented as freedom. Witnesses are told that following the organization's guidance liberates them from the burdens of making difficult decisions independently. They're taught that questioning leads to confusion and misery, while obedience brings peace and happiness. This creates a powerful incentive to avoid the forbidden territory of doubt even when their own experiences contradict these promises. Many former witnesses describe the profound disorientation that comes with entering this forbidden space. Everything they believed about reality, relationships, and their own identity becomes questionable. The very foundation of their worldview crumbles, leaving them to rebuild their understanding of life from scratch. This process is often compared to grieving the death of a loved one, because in many ways, they're mourning the death of their former selves. The organization has developed sophisticated responses to members who begin showing signs of entering forbidden territory. Concerned family and friends are mobilized to provide loving assistance. That often amounts to increased surveillance and pressure to conform. Special meetings are arranged to address specific doubts, with carefully prepared responses that redirect questioning back toward organizational authority. When these gentler measures fail, more serious consequences follow. Members who persist in questioning may be marked as bad association, limiting their social interactions within the community. If they continue, they may be removed from positions of responsibility or privilege. The ultimate consequence is complete shunning, where all social contact is severed until the person demonstrates complete submission to organizational authority. This system of escalating consequences creates powerful pressure to self-censor and avoid the forbidden territory altogether. Most witnesses learn to suppress their doubts and questions long before they develop into serious challenges to their faith. They become expert at mental compartmentalization, keeping troubling thoughts isolated from their conscious belief system. The few who do fully enter this forbidden territory often describe it as simultaneously terrifying and liberating. The fear comes from losing everything familiar and secure, while the liberation comes from finally being able to think freely and honestly about their experiences and beliefs. Many report that despite the enormous costs, they wouldn't trade their freedom to think critically for the false security of unquestioning obedience. Recovery from this psychological imprisonment is a long and difficult process. Former members must learn to trust their own judgment after years of being taught that independent thinking is dangerous. They must develop critical thinking skills that were systematically suppressed and rebuild their understanding of ethics, relationships, and reality itself. Support networks of former witnesses have developed to help those navigating this transition. Online communities provide safe spaces where people can explore forbidden questions without fear of immediate social consequences. Professional counselors specializing in religious trauma have developed therapeutic approaches specifically designed to address the unique challenges faced by those leaving high-control religious groups. The impact of this psychological prohibition extends far beyond individual members. Families are destroyed when some members enter the forbidden territory, while others remain loyal to the organization. Parents lose contact with their children, marriages dissolve, and lifelong friendships end abruptly. The social cost of maintaining this psychological prison is enormous and ongoing. Perhaps most tragically, this prohibition against critical thinking prevents the organization from acknowledging and addressing its own mistakes and failures. Instead of learning from errors in judgment or policy, the organization doubles down on its authority and demands greater obedience from members. This creates a cycle where problems persist and worsen because examining them honestly would require entering the forbidden territory of organizational criticism. The existence of this psychological forbidden zone also explains why logical arguments and evidence are often ineffective in helping witnesses reconsider their beliefs. The problem isn't lack of information or poor reasoning skills. It's that they've been trained to avoid the mental space where such information could be honestly evaluated. Until they could overcome their conditioning against critical thinking, no amount of evidence or argument can reach them. Understanding this dynamic is crucial for anyone trying to help a Jehovah's Witness friend or family member. Direct challenges to their beliefs often trigger defensive mechanisms that reinforce their psychological barriers rather than breaking them down. More effective approaches focus on encouraging the person to trust their own experiences and feelings, gradually building confidence in their ability to think independently. The one place where Jehovah's Witnesses cannot go isn't found on any map or marked by any sign. It exists in the space between their ears, in the realm of honest self-examination and critical evaluation of their beliefs. This invisible prison is more effective than any physical barrier because its walls are built from their own fears, dependencies, and conditioned responses. Breaking free from this psychological imprisonment requires enormous courage and often comes at devastating personal cost. Yet for those who make this journey, the freedom to think, question, and choose their own path represents a liberation that makes even the highest price seem worthwhile. The forbidden territory of independent thought, once entered, reveals itself not as a place of danger and darkness, but as the foundation of authentic human dignity and intellectual freedom.